How's it going, everybody? It is Santi Rico from the Mile High Basketball Guys podcast and Rocky Mountain Pro, if you know me for a minute. My plan is to do a new series for MMA and particularly the UFC, as that's the most visible MMA promotion that there is today. So, every week that we have a UFC event, I am going to give my predictions on the fights that I think I'm qualified to give my predictions for. Because a lot of these things, I really can't guess what's going to happen because I'm not familiar with every MMA fighter. It takes an encyclopedic knowledge that I frankly haven't had the time to shore up on. But I want to live, breathe, and crap MMA. So ultimately, I want this video series to be my main jig, but for now, it's going to be just every event. Starting this week with the UFC Fight Night, Cody Garbrandt versus Rob Font. I think it's going to be an excellent main event. The rest of the card, sort of underwhelming. There's a couple of fights that stick out at me, but I'm really in it for the main event, just like every other UFC event there is, really. But anyways, let's move on to the fights that I find myself in a position to make an accurate prediction, or at least as accurate as can be with the sport of MMA. So, the first fight that I feel qualified to make an informed decision slash prediction about is Ben Rothwell versus Chris Barnett. It should be fireworks, absolute fireworks. Chris Barnett, he's not really fought in the UFC before, but he's known for his punching power and his ability to knock out his opponent, whereas Ben Rothwell he's a knockout artist, so to speak. He doesn't really put a lot behind his punches. He's just a real all-around MMA fighter, and he's been that way for a long time. He's been a mainstay in the UFC heavyweight division. He's got boxing credentials just as much as he has jiu-jitsu credentials and wrestling credentials. He's an everyman. So it's going to be a very hard test for Chris Barnett. Ultimately, I think as long as Ben uses his complete tool set against Chris Barnett, he's going to get the win. He's got to really watch out in that first round, as Chris Barnett is definitely a first round sort of finisher. He likes to throw heavy punches, but if Ben can get him past the first and second round, I think it's going to be easily in Ben's favor to sink in a choke or to knock him out. Just that, Ben has cardio for days. He can go for 5 rounds if he needs to, and he has. So as long as Ben can drag Chris into a deep water situation, I think Ben is going to get the edge in this, either via unanimous decision or we'll say knockout, huh? The next fight that sticks out at me is the start of the main card. We have Jack Hermansen versus Edmund Shabazzian. It should be a really good fight, in my opinion. I love Edmund Shabazzian. I was really just shouting his praise from up on high. And I think this is a really good test for him against Jack Hermansen. Both of these men are coming off of a pretty difficult loss. Jack Hermansen off of a 5-round unanimous decision. Edmund Shabazzian off of a TKO against who was it? Derek Brunson. So we'll have to see how it goes. Usually, coming off of a loss is more difficult for somebody who's never lost before. But I think Edmund Shabazzian does represent a positive change in the sport of MMA. And I think his mentality is there. I think he wants to be better. And having that loss, having that difficult battle against Derek Brunson really showed him where he needs to focus his attention. So those holes that Derek Brunson poked in Edmund Shabazzian are exactly the same holes that I expect Jack Hermansen to poke at him. Jack Hermansen had a rough outing against Marvin Vettori last time. He had a hard time getting the takedowns. He had a hard time boxing at distance. He had a hard time keeping Marvin Vettori down. Marvin really fought his fight, kept him at distance, and just forced him to engage in a place where Marvin could win. So Ultimately, where Marvin succeeded, I can see Edmund Shabazzian succeeding as well. So as long as Edmund is able to keep up his takedown defense and his wrestling and clinch work on the cage, I think Edmund can really show his skill and his technique and possibly even get a knockout in this matchup. The next fight that sticks out at me is Hikaru Hamosh versus Bill Algeo. I like both of these fighters. I think they're both very talented. I don't know if they're upper tier featherweight material, but they definitely have what it takes to defeat each other. They have the right tool set. So what's interesting to me is what is Ricardo Hamosh gonna do, because Ricardo, in my approximation, is the more experienced, just because he's been in the UFC a lot longer than Bill Algeo. Bill Algeo is recently coming in just last year, I believe. So he has yet to get a finish in the UFC, whereas Ricardo Hamosh has been putting in finishes from the start. So it will be an interesting fight. I think Bill Algeo has an advantage at range if he's able to use that extra couple of inches that he has in reach and really keep his distance well. I think he's going to be able to piece up Ricardo Hamosh and maybe squeeze out a decision. But I would really like to see Bill Algeo go for it and try and get his first finish in the UFC. That would be very important to staking a claim in this featherweight division, given how talented everybody is in the featherweight division. But Ricardo Hamosh is no easy obstacle. He can take you down. He can wrestle you. He can submit you from the ground. He can attack you at distance. He's got it. In Bill Algeo is gonna have to overcome a lot if he wants to get this victory, which is why I think Ricardo Hamosh is gonna pull off the victory, whether it's by submission or knockout. I don't see Bill Algeo making it past the third round. And the final fight that I'm going to talk about and feel qualified to talk about, of course, is the main event, the namesake of UFC Fight Night, Font versus Garbrandt, and that would be Rob Font versus Cody Garbrandt. This is going to be a really close fight. I expect just so many punches, so much feinting and really playing with each other, because both of these guys will shut your lights out in an instant if you give them the opportunity. Rob Font is an excellent boxer, much in the same vein as Cody Garbrandt. So we'll have to see if Rob Font can really fight the ego of Cody Garbrandt. Because when Cody fights angry, he leads himself open. He ends up running straight into a bunch of stuff, and that's what you need. Because Cody, when he is mentally in the game, he is one of the fastest bantamweights to ever do it. He is so quick. He is so deadly. His last knockout was incredible. You never even saw it coming, and he just put man's lights out. So Rob Font ultimately has to play it very safe, I think, in the opening round, and just try and not be there for Cody to hit, because when Cody's not hitting people, he gets really flustered, and he starts trying to hit him even harder. And if Rob Font can get him into that mind state where he just wants to hit you, I think Rob Font is going to be able to pull off a counter strike, maybe a knockout, or ultimately just outbox him, because he's leaving himself open and he's fighting angrily rather than technically. So ultimately it comes down to how Cody's going to be. If he fights how he fought last time and he controls himself, he doesn't let his anger get the best of him, and he picks the right shots, he can win. He can easily knock out Rob Font. Not that Rob doesn't have a chin, but Cody is fast and he hits hard. He moves very quickly, and he can be in and out in a second. He's been mixing in a lot of leg kicks, which is the story of MMA so far. It's just getting towards leg kicks because they're so effective. And if Cody can land a few of those, compromise Rob Font's movement, and just outpace him, I think Cody can have the win. Ultimately, I would have to put my money on Cody Garbrandt, but I am rooting for Rob Font. Viva Puerto Rico. I love any Puerto Rican that can get to the top of a sport. So I'm going to be rooting for Rob Font. I think if he beats Cody Garbrandt, he makes a huge claim to be in the top 10 of the bantamweight division, and ultimately I want to see him go for the title. But that doesn't mean that Cody is not dangerous, because Cody can easily take away those dreams, both Rob's and my dreams of a Puerto Rican going up. So we'll see how it goes. Let me know what you guys think is going to happen. I know I didn't talk about all the fights on the card. If I talked about all the fights on the card, the video would be like 25 minutes long and nobody would watch it. So thank you very much for watching this. If you like this kind of content, go ahead and like and subscribe. I'll be sure to be doing this for every UFC event, as it is my passion sport. And without further ado, thank you. Goodbye.